Have you ever felt that something miraculous is just around the corner, but you can't quite put your finger on what it is? Perhaps you've been waiting for an answer to a prayer, wondering if God's response is ever coming. But what if I told you that God's answer might already be knocking on your door, just waiting for you to open it? Today we're going to explore the profound truth that God's answers can often be closer than we think. We may not always recognize them immediately, but if we tune our hearts to His voice, we'll realize that He's been guiding us all along. In the Bible, the Lord reassures us that He is always near, even when we feel distant or disconnected. In James 4 verse 8, it says, "Draw near to God, and He will draw near to you." This verse reminds us that God is always present and waiting for us to seek Him with sincerity. Sometimes we may feel abandoned or unheard in our struggles, but God's presence is not contingent on our feelings. He is with us, even when we don't perceive Him. His answers might not always be loud or immediate, but they are always on time. Through faith, we can trust that He has a plan and that His timing is perfect. The question is, are we ready to listen? In the story of Elijah, 1 Kings 19 verses 11 to 13, God's voice came not in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire, but in a gentle whisper. Often, God's answers are found in the quiet moments of our lives, those gentle whispers that we must make time to hear. So, let's explore how God's answers can come in different forms and how we can cultivate a heart that is ready to receive them. Life can be overwhelming, can't it? You pray, you wait, but the answers don't seem to come. Doubt creeps in and frustration begins to take hold. You might feel like you're in a spiritual desert, wondering if God has forgotten about you or if He's even listening at all. These are common feelings that we all experience at some point in our lives. When we face challenges, whether big or small, we often feel the need for an immediate response. We want clarity, we want relief, but sometimes nothing changes in the moment. In times like these, it's essential to remember the story of the Israelites in the wilderness. After their escape from Egypt, they found themselves wandering in the desert for 40 years, waiting for God's promise of a land flowing with milk and honey. They were tired, hungry, and often lost hope. Yet God never abandoned them. He provided manna, water from the rock, and His presence in the form of a cloud by day and fire by night. God's answer wasn't always immediate, but it was always present. In Isaiah 40 verse 31, we are reminded that those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. Even in our moments of waiting, God is at work in ways we may not understand. The temptation during these times is to give in to despair, to believe that God isn't answering our prayers. But in Psalm 13 verses 1 to 2, David cries out, "How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me?" Even the great psalmists and prophets experienced seasons of doubt. Yet each time they discovered that God's presence was closer than they thought, and His answers were always in line with His perfect plan. We may not always understand the delay, but we can trust in God's faithfulness, knowing that His answers are worth the wait. God's answers don't always come in the way we imagine. We often expect them to be big, dramatic events, but they can appear in subtle, everyday moments. Sometimes His answer is an opportunity that opens up unexpectedly. Maybe it's a new job offer, a friendship that blossoms, or a creative idea that seems to come out of nowhere. Other times, God's answer might come in the form of peace, a quiet reassurance in your heart that everything will be okay, even when your circumstances haven't changed yet. In Philippians 4 verse 7, Paul speaks of the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, a peace that guards our hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. This peace is often the answer we need when we feel anxious or overwhelmed. Sometimes, God's guidance isn't about changing our external circumstances, but about changing our internal perspective. When we surrender to His will and trust His timing, we often experience a peace that defies logic, an answer that confirms we are on the right path, even when things aren't perfect. I've personally experienced this kind of peace in moments when I was uncertain about my future. I remember a time when I felt like every door was closing in front of me. I prayed, I fasted, and still nothing seemed to change. But one day, a quiet peace settled over me, and I felt an overwhelming sense that everything was going to be okay. It wasn't a loud voice, but it was a deep, abiding assurance in my heart that God had a plan. This peace is the answer that transcends circumstances. Romans 8 verse 28 assures us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." Even when we can't see it, God is working behind the scenes. There comes a moment when God's answer finally clicks into place and we experience a breakthrough. Sometimes it's not about waiting for the perfect answer. It's about realizing that God has been answering us all along in ways we didn't expect. This is what I call the aha moment. The moment when everything falls into place and you realize that God's plan has been unfolding right before your eyes. In Psalm 18 verse 19, David declares, "He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me." Sometimes we don't recognize the answers because we're too focused on the specific way we want them to come. We expect a dramatic rescue, but God's deliverance often comes in quieter, more personal ways. It's in those moments of realization when you look back and see how God was orchestrating everything for your good, even when you couldn't understand it at the time. I had one of these breakthrough moments during a season of uncertainty. I was questioning whether I was on the right path, and nothing seemed to be moving forward. But then, in a quiet prayer, God gave me a new perspective. It wasn't an external change, but an internal shift that completely changed my outlook. It's in these moments of breakthrough that we see God's presence in a new light. Isaiah 55 verse 9 reminds us, "As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways and my thoughts than your thoughts." God's ways are not always our ways, but they are always for our best. God's answers are often closer than we think, and they come in forms we least expect. He speaks to us through peace, opportunities, relationships, and sometimes through the quiet moments of our day-to-day lives. The key is to remain open, to trust in His timing, and to have the patience to listen for His voice. We must remember that God's ways are higher than our ways, and His understanding surpasses our own. In Jeremiah 29 verse 11, God reminds us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." Even in the waiting, even in the moments of doubt, we can trust that God has a good plan for us. The answers we seek might not come when we want them, but they will come at the perfect time. So, the next time you feel lost or stuck, remember that God's answer might already be knocking at your door. Keep your heart open, stay faithful, and trust that He is always working in your life. As Psalm 23 verse 1 assures us, "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing." With God, we lack nothing, and His answers are more abundant than we can imagine. I'd love to hear your stories. Have you ever experienced a moment where you felt God's answer knocking at your door? Share it in the comments below. And if this video touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others who might need encouragement. Also, check out my next video.